I have a square D8536 240 volt starter for my 3-phase motor. The starter enclosure does not have a start/stop button. I am using a remote NON/C button switch. The starter coil is 120 volts. I thought I could bring in a common wire from another circuit to the right side of the coil and it would work using one leg of the supply line, but the coil isn't latching. Do I need to bring in the hot wire from the same 110 volt circuit to operate the coil, and if so, where do I connect it to?
Welcome. My name is would be glad to assist. Can you first test the starter? Use an extension cord or wires and apply 120 volts to the coil and see that the starter energizes to be sure there isn't a coil issue here. Now, do you have a 120 volt circuit available for the start button? What type of button is this being used? Maintained or momentary? Thanks.
The coil does energize when I connect 120 volts across both sides. I do have a 120 volts outlet next to the starter, which is where I'm pulling the common wire from. I'm using a momentary switch. I have NC on the button switch connected to terminal 2, NC jumpered on the switch connected to terminal X2 and no on the switch connected to terminal 3.
Okay, thanks. You need to use that 120 volt source for your coil power. Run the neutral to one side of the coil on the 120 volt lead to the switch and back from the switch to the overload, which will go to the coil through its contacts and should be pre-wired already. Splitting a circuit with 120 from one source and the neutral from another is not allowed. Power must be from the same source, hot and neutral. Normally you would have a 240/120 control transformer mounted and then power for the entire circuit is at the starter. Starters have various terminal numbers with the different manufacturers and starters themselves, so a picture of yours would allow to see the actual terminals to comment on their connections.
Here is a picture of the starter and one of the switch. I have the neutral wire connected to one side of the coil. I'm not clear on exactly where to connect the hot lead to the switch and back to the overload. Sorry for the duplicate pictures. There are two terminals at the top left of the starter marked 2 and 3. On the lower left, under the heaters, there are two terminals, one below marked X2 and one above that is unmarked. There are two red wires, factory installed, from the coil. The one on the right is connected to the unmarked terminal above X2. The one on the left is connected to terminal 3.
Okay, here is what it should look like. It is hard to see in that starter. Pictures are appreciated when supplying a separate power feed for the coil. You have to remove any jumpers from any of the L1, L2 or L3 terminals. Sometimes they use a jumper to power the coil. If it is 240 volts, you have 120 and cannot use them.
Thanks, there aren't any jumpers. This coil is 120 volts. This looks like it will work, but isn't one of the switch wires supposed to connect to X2? I thought I needed it to protect against the coil re-energizing if power was lost and then restored later.
If you look at the diagram, you see that it cannot restart after power outage. The start and stop buttons must be momentary push buttons, they cannot be maintained. The start wire just energizes the coil for an instant at number 3, it is then held in by the no contact on the side, so when the starter drops out, that opens and cannot reclose without pushing the start again. Or it will open when you push the stop button, either way. The neutral connects to the overload on the X2 and the other terminal should have a jumper wire that goes up to the coil or vice versa, as it doesn't matter which is used for each because it is just a NC contact that opens on overload. The switch does not connect to the overload on the bottom.
That doesn't work. Pushing the start button brings 120 volts to terminal 2, but it's not closing the coil. If I switch the common wire to the terminal with the jumper to the coil, it closes whenever there is power to the 120 volts line, without pushing start.
The start does not connect to terminal 2. It connects to terminal 3 with the wire that goes to the coil. You are reading it incorrectly. The wire on terminal 2 is a constant hot that comes from the stop button. Look at the diagram. Look at the stop button. Power comes to one contact on the NC, then a wire from the other side of the NC on the stop connects to one side of the start node, then a wire on that same contact on the start goes to number 2, then a wire from the other side of the node on the start goes to number 3. So, you have constant power to the stop, and it is NC, so power is on the other side of the stop, then there is power to one side of the start and also to the number 2, so, when you press the start, power goes to number 3 and pulls in the contactor stays pulled in because you have constant power to number 2, and since the starter is pulled in, the number 2 and number 3 are now closed. When you press the stop, then power is removed from the number 2, and so the contactor drops out because now number 3 has no power to the coil.
Thanks. I switched the wires on terminals 2 and 3 and it worked. I did have to connect the neutral wire to the terminal with the jumper to the coil, and X2 now does not have anything connected to it. Do you know what X2 is for?
The neutral cannot go directly to the coil, it must go through the overload, or else there is no safety and the motor can burn up because of an overload. Push the reset on the overload, the big red bar, until it clicks and sets. It must be tripped and need resetting. It is NC contact that opens when too much amperage is pulled by the motor. The heater coils measure the amperage and trip the overload.
The reset bar doesn't click when I push it in as far as it can go. It never has in the 2 days I've been trying to get this thing to work. Since I can't get the coil to latch unless I hook up neutral to one side, do you think I may have a faulty starter? What else is there to try?
Really need to test those 2 terminals for continuity. Those 2 terminals are normally closed, so there should be continuity between the 2. If not, your overload is bad and needs replacing, not the whole starter. The overload comes off and can be replaced with a new one. It needs to be fixed though. You want the neutral side running through the contact and not around it like it is now. You do not want to witness a motor burn up or a starter blow off the wall because of a bypassed overload.
Thanks. I suppose that was the problem all along. Or might I have damaged the overload by hooking up something wrong?
If you have a home improvement or appliance question and want to chat with an expert now, visit JustAnswer.com/YTHI.